and welcome. And today the topic is there must be light. Because folks, I am sick and tired of not having light at my convenience even though I have paid for it. I am sick and tired of hearing losses in the states because of power outages. Folks, I am sick and tired of hearing fires and people die in fires because sudden surges when the lights come on. Sick and tired of hearing women queued up to have a C-section, but there's no light. Folks, I'm sick and tired of tuning on the news and you hear energy people squabbling as to whose fault it is why there's no light. Sick and tired of the president telling me that, by this date and by that date, it will be over, and it's never over. In fact, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And today I have two experts in the studio, and we're going to find out if we were ever going to stop being sick and tired of being sick and tired. My name is Nana Sakwa, and this is PM Express. I'm coming back.
Can see I'm using the fuel, and the fuel too is very expensive, so we can't get enough money, and at the end of the day we just lost the money because if you put on the generator you can't get the money for the fuel. So before you get the customers, the fuel has already run out.
We use generators 3-4 times a week, so it tells you how ridiculous this doom saw is.
Generators. And that has also been keeping me, as in putting me in debt as well. Every day buying fuel of 30 Ghana cedis, 50 Ghana cedis, is really rolling me down. Yeah.
Production, as in the input in our business has come down. Normally when we are having the normal light, the way we produce is higher than when we buy the generator, because the generator doesn't take us far. We buy, say, 20 cedis, and by the middle of the afternoon or the day, then it's off. Then we can't go back to go and buy another fuel again. It will cost us. So it happens that we have to close down the shop and then go home. And that is a big loss to us.
For instance, I'm a refrigeration mechanic. Maybe somebody will call you. Before you get to the person's house, they say, oh, the light just went off. So wait. You wait maybe 3-4 hours. You have to come back to the shop. And then the same problem. So from house, you come and sit down, then you go. So I think this government should do something about it. And then to buy generator and the fuel and to...
There has to be light. In fact, sometimes when I hear finance ministers and all these economic gurus making projections, I wonder what sort of energy they see that they make these projections on board, or if it is based on no energy. Because indeed, for any nation to make any projection, it is based on some sort of energy to run industry. Where is ours? With me in the studio, to my immediate left is Dr. Eric Chum, who is the CEO of Institute of Green Growth Solutions. Doctor, you're welcome.
Thank you.
And then to my far left is Dr. Mohammed Amin Adams, Executive Director, Africa Center for Energy Policy. Doctor, you're welcome.
Thank you.
We'll start with you, Dr. Chum. How did we get here?
Thank you very much. The problem is not new. We had known this for a long time. We had our first experience in 2006, 2007, where the MPP were in power. Now, we knew that the problem of energy was going to be a problem that will hinder our progress as a middle-income country. We are told that it costs 1% of our GDP, which is about 187 million Ghana cedis, dollars then. The problem is the will of our leaders to get the problem resolved. We have leaders who, at the moment, are much more, instead of being proactive, are reactive to situation. And that is the big issue at the moment.
Doc, Once upon a time, South Korea made a projection that their growth for electricity was 5% per year. It turns out that it was actually 20% per year. So that's how far away they were. So they were overtaken by events. At one point, they used to bring trains in the evening to, get factories working after the trains have stopped working. Is it that we also got our projections wrong, or we got it right but slept?
That's very interesting. I think before I talked about the projections, Dr. Chum was very charitable about the beginning of the crisis.
Yes.
In 1983, we had power crisis. In 1989, we had power crisis before the 2006. And so we knew, from 1983 that we were not developing our power sector as fast and as much as we should have been doing. And so that brings us to the question of projections. Until recently, we used to project demand growth at between 6 and 7%. All of a sudden, last year or last 2 years, we were told by the Energy Commission that demand growth was at 12% per annum.
I see.
Now, if you looked at official documents, 2-3 years ago, they still had 6-7% demand growth on official documents. It is in very recent official documents that you now see between 10 to 12% appearing as demand growth. And therefore, if we know that we were growing at 6-7% and we were not investing to expand generation capacity at the rate of 6-7%, then it meant that we were sleeping. But even then, it was suppressed projection. The actual projection in terms of demand growth, now put at 12%, means that if we are not developing our generation capacity year on year at the rate of 12%, again, we are sleeping. And so the reason you do projection is for purposes of planning. And so when you have projected demand growth and you don't make conscious effort to increase generation to meet demand growth, then you are going to have load shedding. Because industries are growing, some of them expanding. We even have an economic agenda of growing our country to a middle income status, which means that we should have understood the power requirement, the requirement for electricity to take our economy to that level. Unfortunately, we are a middle income country, but we are not growing like a middle income country because the growth for this year is under 4%. That is not the growth of a middle income country. And some of the reasons why we are growing at this level, apart from the fiscal crisis, is also the power crisis. Because those that contribute to the growth do not have the input that they need to generate the output. And so the issue of planning is our problem. And I think that going forward, and I'm sure we'll discuss some of the things we think we should be doing.
Sure.
We should be looking at how realistic our projections are and how ready are we to meet our projections.
Dr. Chu, I mean, at the moment, and I'm sure, I don't have the stat, but I'm sure if I go back to 83 all the way to now, never has Ghana had so much, installed capacity. But somehow we are unable to get them to do what they are supposed to do. So we hear that, oh, this one's got 300, but it's only giving you 70. That one has got 1,000, but it's only giving you 400. And they are all sort of, shortfalls. Where do we go from here?
The whole issue is there's something called baseline generation capacity. That is, how much do we need as a country to be energy secure? At the moment, we are not generating that capacity. So you can't give what you don't have. So the issue about generation, as Dr. mentioned, has not been addressed. And so what we've been trying to do over the period is cosmetic dressing of the problem, but not addressing the key problems, which, again, we knew the problem, we had done research, we knew the solutions, but yet very little had been done. We knew, obviously, that the energy sector needed huge investments, which unfortunately government cannot take the responsibility and require the need for private sector to come in. Now, we didn't create an enabling environment for them. So from generation to transmission distribution, the ECG, for instance, is not healthy financially. And so even if you have private investors in, the ECG cannot buy from them. The government owes so much money to the ECG. And so we have not dealt with the problem in a synchronized manner, right from generation, transmission to distribution. And until we have all these institutions well-versed, synchronized, and their problems resolved, we will still be marked in time.
Let me add to some of the constraints. I mean, Dr. Chum just talked about ECG's financial position, which has constrained our ability as a country to attract independent power producers. I mean, because the independent power producers are coming to produce power and sell to ECG. And so if ECG is not a credible off-taker, there is no incentive for any private sector to come and invest in generation capacity, only to be fighting with ECG over payment, for power. But other constraints, which I think we well know, number one, is the fact that government itself doesn't have the money. And so if the government doesn't have the money, definitely you have to go for the private sector. But why government should have the money and be able to capitalize the utilities is because government is 100% owner of VRA. And so when you're 100% owner of a company, you capitalize the company when they have financial challenges. Okay? But government has not been able to do that. Now, the fact that we have tried to even capitalize VRA through tariffs has not worked because we're paying tariffs for maintenance of existing, facility and not for the development of new facility. Okay? And therefore, it is government that has to address the issue of generation expansion in order to capitalize how VRA can add to the generation capacity, while consumers pay tariffs to maintain that facility. Now, the other issue, which I think is very important, has to be fuel insecurity. Until we found, gas in the Jubilee field, and now in Sankofa, Nigeria was supposed to give us gas. We didn't have indigenous gas, and Nigeria wasn't giving us the required quantity. And so while light crude oil was so expensive, gas, which was cheaper, was not available. Now, which private sector is coming to put in such huge investment in generation capacity when there will not be fuel to fire the plant? And so that was also a disincentive. And above all, the issue of tariffs. Tariffs historically have been low. They have not been realistic. And I'm sure you know why the utilities are asking for adjustment in tariffs every time.
I was going to come in and say, so when the IPPs come in, how will they sell? Because if our prices are not realistic, so let's say they produce at 30 pence per unit and we are selling at 23 pence per unit, how then, when they come in, where do we go?
You see, the issue we have to address, which we haven't done as a country, is to develop our own benchmarks. Benchmarks in terms of the type of plant a private sector should come and establish in Ghana. Benchmarks in terms of fuel consumption. And then benchmark in terms of cost. Okay, once you don't do that, different investors are going to bring different plans, which will have different cost implications. And therefore, we are having to pay different, private sector operators at different rates. Now, some of them buy their materials from abroad, and therefore, when the exchange rate, fluctuates, it affects that. Some will source some of their materials locally. Okay, but it may not be available. So if you allow any private sector to just come in and put up a plan without setting your benchmarks, what they do is to go to PURC. PURC will give them the base tariffs. They expect that there will be adjustment as the fundamentals in the tariff formula change. And if they change and we don't adjust adequately for them, then they begin to record losses. That is the problem. And so if we have to, give the right tariffs. Right tariffs means, number one, we must have our baseline in terms of our benchmarks, in terms of what type of plant people should bring. If an investor cannot bring a plant which reflects our standards, we don't need that plant.
Okay.
Number two, after base tariffs, the adjustment that we do we have to look at light crude oil, which is part of the formula, and what type of light crude oil? Where do we source it from? If VRA is sourcing is from Nigeria, should they get the same adjustment as another company that is sourcing it from Libya, for instance? These are the benchmarks that we need. Otherwise, blanket adjustment based on crude oil price changes is not realistic, because different, private sector operators may source their light crude oil from different markets. And as you know, we don't have a single price for light crude oil.
No.
Because crude oil are of different, categories.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if we talk about exchange rate, those that are sourcing their, materials from Europe and those that are sourcing from the United States of America, if we have to adjust based on on exchange rate fluctuation, do we give them the same, adjustment across board? No. So these are the fundamentals that we need to agree to as a country and ensure that there is predictability in the kind of tariffs that we deliver. And so for an investor who suffers more when there is exchange rate fluctuation, you do not give tariffs that favor him relative to another investor in the same market, who is favored by the exchange rate. Same thing as the crude oil. Somebody who is importing at a higher price, if you give an adjustment to satisfy the one, with the lower price, you disadvantage the other one. And so certainty, what we call regulatory or tariff certainty, is not there. And that is why he said that you don't provide the enabling environment. And once you don't do that, there's so much uncertainty on the minds of investors, you are not going to get them.
Dr. Chim, there was great anticipation of our Tuabo gas. Now we hear they're pumping 120, cubic feet. Is it million
standard cubic feet?
Standard cubic feet.
Million standard cubic feet.
However, the generators or the plants to take them are not ready to, consume all that. I mean, whose fault is it?
That's a worrying situation for us, because one of the things that as a nation we should be looking at is to look within and solve our own problems. And the problem of management has been one of the key problems with this. Now, let them digress a little bit and talk about, for instance, VRA and ECG. Now, we are told that about 36% of what ECG actually buys from VRA is completely wasted. Now, if that is the situation, and we want to look at even the gas that are being supplied, these are the very fundamentals that will help fire the plant for our generation problems to be resolved. Now, if we are not managing our gas properly, again, we are not making any progress. And there are assurances upon assurances and upon assurances. But until we put our house in order and do proper management, at the moment, I'm not seeing a proper gas pricing policy out there that cuts across board, that anybody at all could buy into. And that is an issue. We have not got our fundamentals right. And until that is done, I'm afraid we will still be in the same situation we find ourselves right now.
Dr. Richmond, I think we now have a national gas pricing policy, which has been advertised by the Ministry of Energy. I think it's on their website. And I've gone through, I've analyzed that document, which seems to be well. I mean, I also know that the World Bank made significant contribution to the development of the gas, pricing policy, because the World Bank was worried about attracting investment to develop our standard gas. Unless you have a pricing, policy which is appealing, they are not going to come. Any investor that comes to look for, oil or gas, primarily is looking for oil. When they don't find oil, then they may find, gas, non-associated gas. And we, in our fiscal regime, provides that if they find gas, it belongs to the state. Okay, and so which investor is going to come in, and develop a gas that belongs to the state, unless the state is ready to make some concessions. And I've seen the state making significant concessions in this ENI project.
Okay.
But really, to answer the question you posed, it is as a result of poor planning that we are where we are. What is it that when we conceptualized the gas, processing plant and the pipeline, we did not take a decision to extend the pipeline to Tema? When we know that we have so many of our generating plants that consume gas. Apart from Senate, which relies on light crude oil, all the plants at Tema now consume gas. Asogli, totally gas, 200 megawatt. The Tema plant 126 is now diesel or gas. The Tema plant 2, the 50 megawatt plant, is diesel or gas. The mine reserve plant, 80 megawatt, is DFO or gas. So they all now use gas. Yet we sent the pipeline to Abuazi, and we know that Abuazi can give us about 550. Okay, yet 120, million standard cubic feet from Atoabo, plus what Nigeria is giving us, is in excess of what Abuazi can consume. Okay, and so VRA is not ready because some of the units at T2 are not ready, and because of that, gas is stranded. If we had extended the pipeline to Tema, those plants that are idle, Nigeria is not giving us gas. So Asogli is shut down, yet we have gas stranded in Abuazi, in Takoradi. That is wrong planning. Okay, now there's what we call cycling, gas cycling, under which condition Atoabo could have negotiated with the West Africa gas pipeline. That is, assuming the West Africa gas pipeline had gas flowing in, so that they can supply Atoabo Ghana gas customers in Tema. Okay, and then the West Africa gas pipeline can also supply Ghana gas customers in Takoradi. Now, VRA is the sole customer now of both Ghana gas and West Africa gas pipeline. And so the negotiation would have been so easier. But because Nigeria is not giving us gas today, we are suffering. However, if we had planned well and extended the pipeline to Tema, they will not have any problem. Some people have argued that, why do we have to extend the pipeline when Abuazi, West Africa gas pipeline already goes there? And we know that the West Africa gas pipeline has an open access clause in the contract, which allows them to carry other, gas produced by other companies or supplied by other companies. But it also provides that where West Africa gas pipeline has gas to deliver, they have the first preference.
Okay. But with their track record, I don't think they will ever have gas to deliver. So maybe we are safe to use it.
Well, the reason why they are not giving us gas is because of our own making. There is what we call a take or pay clause, or deliver or pay, supply or pay clause. If they don't supply to us, they pay a penalty to us. They are happy paying the penalty because how much is it? It's so little to them. The issue is pricing, and we have demonstrated to them that the price they are giving to us is bad, because the price of Atoabo has been pegged higher than the price of West Africa gas pipeline. And we say in our gas pricing policy that the excess over what West Africa gas pipeline charges will go into a gas reserve fund, which will then be used for development projects. But once you have put a gas price above what they give us, then you have indicated to them that, look, you guys are joking. More so if you compare the cost of doing West Africa gas pipeline at the time it was done with what we have done with Atoabo, it is higher in terms of cost. And therefore, pricing should have been higher. Okay, and so Nigeria is happy delivering their gas to Italy. And I'm sure you know that while they are not supplying us, they are starting a project to put a pipeline through Italy to supply Europe with gas. Okay, and so we have to negotiate realistically. It is the economics.
Pay the right price.
Yeah, pay the right price.
I'm going to take a break here, and then when I come back, we just find out what is the solution. What can we do? Sit around a round table. What ideas would we shed to make sure that posterity will never sit and ask, where is the light? Stay tuned. Well, thank you very much for staying, but quite simply, there has to be light. And just before I bring Dr. Chumi, let me bring Dr. Amin in. The ENI is going to give us 1,100 megawatts of power, and that's just been, all the paperwork has been signed, and so we're looking forward to that.
I think we are confusing issues here. I mean, I have seen the plan of development on the Sankofa project. There is no power production as part of the project, the $7 billion project we're talking about. There is no power plant as part of it. No. But what the president meant was that the gas we are getting from the fields can fire 1,100 megawatts of power.
That's if you have the
generating plants. But there is no component of the project that require ENI to build, generation plant of 1,100 megawatts as we are told. They are simply going to do the development of the fields, 8 producer wells for the phase 1, which will produce oil, and then 5 producer wells for the phase 2, which will bring gas, produce gas from Sankofa Main, Sankofa East, and Jinyame. And that will be over 20 years, 1.017 trillion cubic feet. But the daily rate will be around 180 million standard cubic feet. They are not producing, they are not building a power plant. We have to build a power plant. And so when I read from, various media that the president signed a power project with ENI, I was taken aback because it was a gas project the president signed, the commercial gas, agreement that they signed, as well as the gas sales agreement with GNPC. There is no component on this project.
So if we need that 1,100, we need to go and find a plant.
We need to find a plant. We need to find a plant. And I also heard the president saying that the gas at 180 million standard cubic feet daily production can fire 1,100. I think he has to check his figures, because 1,880 coming daily can fire, in my view, 800 megawatt of power. 120 can do 500 or 550. 180 can do 800 and not 1,100 megawatt. So we have to cross-check the figures. I don't think that is the right information.
Maybe it's very potent gas. Dr. Jim, what can we do so we don't go through it? Is it just about invest and wait, or are there some short-term alternatives that we can use? And indeed, since that you are Institute of Green Growth, are there any green alternatives that we can use, or we don't have a choice, we have to burn fossil fuel?
Thanks. I think the first we need to look at alternatives to the hydro and that we relied on for so long. I think the issue about renewables need to be revisited again, because there are a lot of issues that had to do with the high initial capital investments, the feed-in tariffs as well. But I think that we could work on internally. Again, there has to be consistent gas supply, because we have that also in abundance. Like my colleague mentioned, we need to look at the planning and the proper management of these, because gas is 3 times less the cost of liquefied crude oil. So it will make the supply of power that will fire the plants, that will increase our generation capacity better. And so we need to have consistent gas supply. Again, we also have to look at the issue about energy efficiency. How do we manage what we actually have properly, such that we don't waste so much of them? Again, the commercial performance of the ECG really needs to be looked at. How efficient they run, customer service, how reliable they actually work. In terms of investments, we are looking at the long term. We got some good news yesterday. How do we harness and make sure that these doesn't become a 9-day wonder? Practically, how do they affect us as individuals? And again, I mentioned earlier, we should create the enabling environment for private investors into the energy sector, because once we have our base generation capacity, then obviously our problems will be solved. But until we reach that stage, we will still be in the same crisis as we are today.
Per your, if ECG is losing about 30% through wastage, then basically what we are
21%. 21% now.
21%.
Yeah.
Okay, 21%. So we are basically losing just about what they have to shed off now. And that if we were very efficient, probably we could have even managed the little that we have in there now. But Doc, how are we losing them? Is it through we just leaving bulbs on, or through inefficient wires and inefficient transmitters?
Yeah, there are two types of losses. We have the technical losses, which are those you basically mentioned through the cables, old cables we haven't replaced, the transformers are not functioning, but we also have the non-technical losses that has to do with inefficiency. The commercial losses, that's the non-technical losses. So if you put that together, it gives you an average of 21% losses. But the technical losses, I know it's about 7 to 8%. The commercial losses are higher.
But it's a lot, though.
It's a loss. It's a loss. In fact, in 2011, the loss to ECG as a result of high commercial and technical losses was about 110 million US dollars. If ECG got 110 million US dollars, the financial position, the weak financial position ECG finds itself, as a result of which we are now talking about privatizing ECG, will not have resulted.
Wow, that's a lot of money. That's a lot.
I'm sure you know that the MCC Compact 2, all the money is coming because they want to reposition ECG to become financially strong, to become a credible off-taker, and therefore GE Electric, that wants to come and do 1,000. Who are they going to sell the power to? Fortunately, it's an American company. You think the Americans will bring their investor to come and do 1,000 megawatt to sell to a distribution company that cannot pay for it? And so Compact 2 is here to support ECG. And this is why they are requiring the government as condition, before disbursement, to partially privatize ECG. Government is having consultations as to whether to give shares in ECG out or to do what we call a franchise arrangement, in which case a company companies bid for it. One is given the ECG to operate. That will inject capital in ECG for a number of years. This is not the same as management contract, under which the government has to still put in investment, while the investor, the contractor only manages, provides services. It's different from the franchise arrangement. So there are some discussions going on between ownership transfer and franchise arrangement. And this is a condition for disbursing the MCC. Why ECG and not VRA? Because our major problem today is generation. And everybody's talking about inadequate generation. ECG even is complaining. Why should Ghanaians blame us? If VRA doesn't give us the power, how do we distribute? Okay, but why is the focus of the Americans and now the government on ECG? It's because we have identified that the Americans want their investors to come in, not just to supply power to Ghana, because the quantity of power, the amount of power they're talking about is in excess of what Ghana may need, but also to export power to other countries and give business to American companies. Good enough, because we will have sufficient power here, okay? But they will make their profit. But why will they give us such conditions? That we privatize ECG, as condition for disbursing the MCC money. Because they know that ECG's financial position today is weak. And therefore, if their investors come in and put the power, projects, ECG cannot pay. That is basically the reason.
Dr. Shim, I mean, is this such a bad idea? Because, you see, if there is a competition, so there's Dr. Chum Electric, there's Dr. Amin Electric, and I wake up in the morning and I need to connect to I'll say, well, I'm not going to go to ECG because they are not reliable. I'd rather go to you. Maybe you charge me, 5 pence more or 5 cedis more, but I know that whatever happens, my machines are going to be running. Should we start bringing that sort of competition in there so that, if you're in Dansuman, you have 3, power suppliers that you can go to? And these guys never turn their lights off, or the whole of last year, they only went down 3 times. These guys have gone down 20. So I'd rather choose this. I mean, should we now, have we got into this where we have to choose that option?
I think at the moment, all options are on the table, really. And competition is a welcome development. It brings prices down drastically. I mean, we all know about how it was difficult even getting a SIM card when we had mobile phones introduced in the country.
You have to know somebody who knows somebody.
Exactly. But with the coming of a lot of telecom companies, now you can basically get SIM cards. We have SIM card fraud going on. It's easy to get a SIM card. You can have access to it. And then there are a lot of promotion and package that comes in. So it would not be a bad idea, really, if we actually look at issue about competition in our energy sector.
I mean, look, you see, there are certain areas, maybe not a lot, who can afford it. Look at the Trasacos, the East Legons, the airports, the cantonments, the Labonis. I'm sure if we start with those areas and give them the option, even if somebody was charging twice what ECG was charging, but won't turn their lights off, they will hook onto it like there's no tomorrow and probably leave ECG for the rest of us who was struggling. Maybe they'll turn it off, but we'll wait till it comes on. And then gradually, as the competition comes, they would up their game.
No, I mean, I'm in favor of competition. And I'm not also against privatization. Indeed, I support privatization if that would make ECG, sit up, if that would make ECG more efficient, if that would make ECG reduce the losses, the distribution losses, if that will make ECG financially viable to be able to attract, that is a good argument. But you see, who are the players that will come in? ECG's customer, population about 2.4 million. So who are going to come in and compete with ECG for just a small, amount of customer population? The kind of companies we see in the UK, in the US, the number of people they are serving, they have benefits of economies of scale. Okay, so which serious company is going to come in, to compete with ECG for such a small customer, population? The economies of scale is lost. In fact, there were some people who proposed that government should divide ECG into different, companies, maybe zonal companies. That is segmentation, and then franchise them out so that they can compete between themselves. But you see, that kind of competition is not to have 2-3 companies competing with each other in the same area. You are going to give Kumasi to one company, for instance, another company to Accra. So they will be competing, zone by zone. That doesn't bring the benefits of the competition we need. It is only when you have 2-3 competing with each other in the same zone. That is where the benefit of competition comes. But as I said, ECG customer population is small. So which company is going to come in? If we were to divide ECG into zonal companies, which serious investor will come and take one? That would just be dealing with 100 to 200,000 people. Where's the economies of scale? When will they realize their returns? And this is why I think government is now thinking of franchising ECG as a whole and not to segment it into zonal companies. So I agree. And I know that there is some competition already. Not competition as said, but privatization. The metering system. We have different companies managing the metering system. The banks are doing the bill collection. So there is some amount of privatization. What I think we need to do is for government to call a spade a spade. Sack all ECG management who are not doing well. I was surprised when the Minister of Power inaugurated a committee to collect ECG's debts. I was shocked about that. Because you have people who have been appointed and paid by the taxpayer to ensure that they collect the bills. If they are not collecting it, what the government should do is fire them and appoint more competent people who can do that. The minister should not turn himself into a debt collector. Otherwise, government owes ECG more than non-governmental organizations and individuals. If the minister in cabinet cannot ensure that government pays its share of the debt, is it that committee that can force government to pay that debt? And so that's why we are joking within the ministry, within the energy sector. Now, what is even bothering me more is that we have about 3,000 megawatts of installed capacity. Our peak demand is 2,000 megawatts. So why should we have load shedding? At some point, VRA will say that they are doing maintenance. Some of the plants are for maintenance. Granted. At another time, they don't have money to buy crude oil. Today, there is crude oil. Crude oil is at lower price. So the issue of not able to buy crude oil cannot arise. At some point, they say gas is not coming. Now, at Toabu Gas, they are complaining that they have gas sitting there, but VRA is not ready to use the gas. So what is the problem? And this is why ASEP said only last week that government should tell the Ghanaian people the truth about the power sector. And this is why we have consistently called on government to conduct a technical audit of all the power plants in Ghana and tell Ghanaians what the problems are, how long it would take to fix each of the problems in the plants. If we can do this and be transparent with Ghanaians, I do believe that Ghanaians will understand. The government told us that by the end of last year, 1 unit of the Pone thermal plant, 150 megawatt of power would have been completed and brought on stream. We were told that T2 expansion would have been completed by the end of last year. We are going into the end of the first quarter. Those projects have not been completed. So it is because we are not telling Ghanaians the truth about the situation. And unless we are transparent about it, Ghanaians will never understand.
Dr. Chum, you see, we have developed a culture where when the lights, or when these projects are eventually finished, politicians will come and demand that we say thank you, and we will feel obliged to say thank you that now we have light. Once we have that attitude, where would the political will be to do anything? Because at the moment it seems as if they're doing you a favor. You know, it's a favor if you get light, and that, you know, either you vote for me or you say thank you because men am the Canadian buy. You know, so once that attitude is there, I'm wondering what is going to be the way forward. Because at the moment we are waiting for them to do us a favor.
I think we should have a non-partisan, broad-based discussion on our energy issue. You know, in countries like Norway, we have a proper energy policy program that every political party buys into. And so whether it's party A or party B in power, it implements a national policy. And again, we elect people to office to deliver on the behalf of the citizenry. And unfortunately, we play politics with it. And that has been the issue. The political will to resolve our problem has not been there. And it is not that we vote them into power to do us a favor. They are there to serve us. And that is, again, the issue. Where people are not solving problems, people don't have the decency to say, honorably, I resign and I leave. But yet, they wait either to be fired or to leave the scene by a higher authority before they go. But we elect people to solve problems for us. But if we don't have, I've not seen where a minister has been in power for, has been in office for about a year or two without energy crisis and say that, indeed, I've not been able to solve this problem. So I think I've not done enough. There will be other ideas coming in for us to solve our problem. We have to reach that level in our democracy where people begin to understand that coming to office is not a favor, but to serve the citizenry.
VRA, you know, I think truth be told, they are broke. You know, I think VRA, truth be told, are penniless. Because why else would, you know, gas be coming? We all knew gas was coming, and there was, you know, really big hoo-ha about the gas. And we all know that this gas is going to feed into this generator to plant. And now you tell us that it's not quite ready. We can only take half and take the other half. I think it's a question of they don't have money.
Yes, and that is why the market has, you know, created the opportunity for them to run their plants even in their poverty. Because the market has pushed prices of crude oil down, there. So it's not even the issue of gas. There are plants in Tema. They use light crude oil or diesel. Prices of crude oil have suffered, crashed. So if they cannot even take the gas from Atwabu, what about light crude oil?
Maybe they are very, very broke.
So I may have to, and this is why government must come in, because government is the sole owner of VRA. Okay, but I'm sure you have heard that government is owing VRA, owing ECG, and so it is sad. But I have to say this: as part of the requirement, the conditions for Millennium Challenge, you know, Compact, they are requiring the government to sign an agreement, to develop a plan and sign with them that it will pay all its debts to the utilities. The Americans have to force us and force our government, okay, to develop a plan for paying its debts to the utilities. Government doesn't know this. Government doesn't know that if it pays its debts to the utilities, they will be very strong. The liquidity position of the companies will be strong, and they can operate, you know, more efficiently than they are doing. Government doesn't know that. Americans have to come and force our government. This is very sad for this country. And I think that unless we are realistic between the government, you know, and the government, that this is what we can do and we must do it, we will continue to deceive ourselves.
I mean, that's a very sad and very truthful point that Dr. Amin has raised. I had fire service here some time ago. They also said they've done audits, they've been to some ministries, and clearly they are violating the rules. But because it's a ministry's office, we can't close it down. We leave it open until it burns down, and then we all could go. But you see, it's a culture that's embedded in us, and we are faced with a crisis problem in terms of energy. Here we are with the state who's supposed to solve the problem is the first one, the first culprit. So there's no going forward for us. And truth be told, there's no going forward for us, apart from me inviting you every now and then so we talk about it. I'll take a break and come back and see if there's a way forward, because I think we're all stuck here. Stay tuned. There has to be light. I'm talking to Dr. Muhammad Amin Adams and Dr. Eric Chum. What is the solution? Dr. Amin, what are our solutions? I mean, because at the moment we seem to be stuck. Because the guy with the biggest money who can move it is not paying up, even what he's used, let alone recapitalizing.
Yeah, Nana, this is a very loaded question. Because all along, while we are counting the problems, we are also invariably counting the solutions. You know, for instance, if we say, you know, the debts government owe ECG is a problem, the solution is government must pay the debts. Okay. You know, secondly, we cannot rely on hydro, any longer. It's about 47% VRA hydro. Yeah. You know, BUI is just 5% of the generation mix. You know, somebody has told me that, you say, why do we have 3,000 installed capacity and yet we cannot, you know, meet our peak demand of 2,000, when you know that we have a deficit of about 400 from Akosombo, 200 from... Then I said, yes, if 400 and 200 are out, that is 600. We still have installed capacity of more, you know. But what we actually need to do going forward is to be able to differentiate between installed capacity and available capacity. I have heard government after government saying that they have added this amount of megawatts to generation capacity.
You didn't add anything. We added this.
We added this. I don't think that is where the debate should be. The debate should be how much of available generation capacity have we added? Because if you do the plants and the plants are lying idle, you haven't done anything. You have done nothing. For a long time, because the thermal plants were using diesel, and we said diesel was expensive, they were idling. The mine reserve plant, it was idling. Okay? And so I want us to shift the debate from, you know, installed capacity to available capacity, in which case we must get the fuel. If it is light crude oil, we must get it. If it is natural gas, we must get it. I think the future is natural gas. I don't even think that renewable is the future, because renewable cannot give us base load. It cannot give us base load. I don't see it. And so natural gas is the way. Fortunately, we now have indigenous gas. We have to make our fiscal regime even more attractive. I have heard people say that, oh, why is Ghana, you know, giving lower, you know, fiscal regime? But if you don't do that, how do you attract the international oil companies to come and get the indigenous gas that we need? We wouldn't get that. And so we must be able to balance between our desire for higher revenue, in which case what we call revenue maximization, but also our desire to attract investment so we can get more indigenous gas. Beyond that, we should be looking for, you know, natural, liquefied natural gas, LNG. And I'm happy that the GE Electric, they are coming with their own gas. It's an integrated program. They are not only coming to do, you know, 1,000, but they also want to do an offshore regasification facility.
I always, Dr. Chuma, I always panic when these big boys are coming. You see, because we don't have a history of confident people who negotiate on our behalf. And I always say any country who, you know, you have gold and somebody takes it and then pays you your share in money, or you have oil, they take it and give you your share in money. I mean, who negotiates that?
Yes.
Is it not worrying? Well, at least give me my gold. I mean, I will look at it, but they don't give me money.
It is a worrying scenario, but I think to add to what Dr. Amin said, we should basically be looking within how to solve our own problems. because the solutions we know. We just need the will to get it done, and have a non-partisan debate where we have a proper national energy policy where everybody buys into, with all ideas that will solve, whether be it renewables, whether be it natural gas, whether it has to do with personnel, whether it has to do with infrastructure. We should look within and solve our problems, because we, as a country, we are blessed with a lot of natural resources, and we can solve our own problems. And it's good that we are looking at a long-term solution with investment. That's a very good step. But I must warn that we should not frustrate investors in the energy sector, because we've done it before. If we frustrate them and they leave, we will still be in the same position we find ourselves. We should create an enabling environment to solve our problems.
And you can see that even GE is being intelligent. They are doing only 126, by next year. And they said they will add, up to 7,000. And then in 5 years' time, it will get to the 1,000. I mean, but when you hear our political leaders say, oh, GE next year is coming to do 1,000. And so we will meet our target of 5,000 by the end of 2016. They are doing 125, actually. And they are watching the market. If we are not able to pay for it, you think they will bring the rest and add? They will not. And so they have a 5-year period. We don't wait to do the 1,000 megawatt.
Dr. Abi, very quickly, just as we have managed, Akosombo Dam is all the engineers, everybody is Ghanaian, and we've looked after it ever since. Can we not, going forward, also invite people, build something for us that we can manage, beautifully, rather than? I'm very edgy when you get these big boys in, because we end up with nothing.
Yeah, we have always gone that way. Look at Bree, for instance. Bree was done for us, okay? Big, 400 megawatt. But I'm sure you heard the Bree Authority complaining. When the water levels were going down, government was forcing them to produce more than they could produce. So they will build for us, we will destroy it. Akosombo, they have done up to 7,500 gigawatt hour a year, when it is supposed to be doing 5,000 gigawatt hour a year. Well, are we killing Akosombo or not?
I hope the producers will let us continue this conversation, because we haven't even started yet. But Doctor, thank you very much. It's been very educative, and as I always say, thank you very much for staying tuned. And those of you who follow me on Joy FM tomorrow, on That's My Opinion, I'm saying that, our problem is that we have too much schooling in this country and no education. You have to tune in and listen to that piece. It's between 2 and 3 p.m. Thank you very much for watching.